Okay, we are live.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Newark Museum of Art's Community Day, celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This whole day has been presented by Horizons Foundation for New Jersey. Thank you so much for joining us for the final live program of the day. Last but not least, if you're watching us on Zoom, feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A below. And if you're watching us through Facebook, make sure you leave your questions in the comment area. I am super delighted to introduce you to Bria Goeller. Before she takes the screen and shares some of her work with us, Bria is an artist and designer, creator based out of San Francisco. She believes in the power of storytelling to encourage empathy. She maintains her art practice where she explores themes of connection, vulnerability, identity, and social justice. She also designs unique and sustainable ways of communicating through creative content like graphics, which we're going to see today, some portraits, custom art, films, websites, logos, and branding. She works alongside local artists and organizations to advance the social movements through communicative arts in her communities. I'm super excited to hand the floor over to you, Bria.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Bria. Next. Yeah, so as Jessica mentioned, I focus a lot on isolation and connection in my work, both in like a societal way and also an individual way, and what it means to be alone and together and vulnerable and not. I focus a lot on storytelling and how we can dig deeper and connect to others through art and other forms of storytelling, like writing or film or music. Next. And so, yeah, a lot of my work has themes of support in it. And so the tangible aspects of connecting with others, what it looks like, sort of disembodied forms often, because I feel like focusing on the limbs is sometimes more powerful than the full body. Next. And then also with abstractions of the body, obviously vulnerability is really difficult and it doesn't always go well. So I think that you can do a lot more to represent sort of the consequences of loneliness or lack of connection with exaggerated and altered forms. So sometimes I do stuff like that as well. Next. And I also now, as everyone knows, do race-based work, focusing on communities that need representation, focusing on the why behind the lack of empathy and what that lack of empathy does to a person. This one in particular on the left is focusing on children and sort of the opportunities we have and the open minds that we have in our hands and like what we're doing with those things, which aren't always good. Next, yeah. So then gender too, I often just sort of play with gender, mixing genders, drawing attention to femininity and womanhood in all of its forms, not usually in the ways that it's depicted in popular media, which often frustrate me quite a bit. Next. And then, of course, as every artist always does, I have particularly interdisciplinary artists, which I am. I do a smattering of other things. I do murals, portraits, so like custom commissions and custom portraits, assemblages, sculptures. A lot with nature. This is a New Orleans tree. And then I also run a design practice. So these are some of the just like logos, graphics, websites. I do social media posts, etc. And these are all, I work with communities and groups with causes that I really believe in, usually focusing on minority groups and women and people who need, I feel like, the support. Next. And then I do digital portraits as well. I've been getting into this recently, just like with my tablet, and digital comics and graphics, because I'm a writer as well. So sometimes I like to just illustrate what I write in poems and such with digital drawings. Next. And then these are my latest projects. I thought I would sort of end with it's such a weird idea, but I don't know. I feel like I'm probably not the first one to do it, but I've been going to thrift stores and picking up frames and painting on the frames. And when you put it on against a wall, you can see a shadow behind it of wherever you've painted. So I've been sort of playing with that. It's not super obvious in these photos, but like with the one on the left, the two faces like echo all around in different lightings. And then the body is reflected sort of in the one on the right. Next. And then, of course, this one, which I guess a few of you might know. That is all from me that I have.
Thank you so much, Bria. Kevin, I think we can take the PowerPoint down. If you all have any questions for Bria, feel free to send them again in the Q&A, or if you're on Facebook in the comment area. I think I'm going to kick it off with some of my questions. You talk a lot about empathy through your work. Was there a pivotal point in your career where you're like, this is something I want to integrate in your work, or has that always been part of your practice?
Yeah, no, definitely the former. I think growing up, I'm still super reserved, but a lot more so then. And I moved once and then twice, and then I went to college in a different place, and then I studied abroad twice in like 1,000 different countries. So I was always kind of like picking up on everything and listening to people's stories and feeling really uncomfortable sharing my own. And I was lucky to meet one of my closest friends for 3 years and now partner. I honestly have him to thank for for like finally being vulnerable, because I was going through a lot my freshman year of undergrad, and he literally sat me down. He was like, "Tell me all of your tell me everything that's wrong with you." And I had never opened up in a school setting, especially, about any of that. And so as I went through undergrad and as I started to realize, because I did an interdisciplinary art degree, which was focusing on like social justice work and using art with social justice as a way of storytelling. I just like the more and more I learned about this stuff and about the humanities and about different art mediums, it all came back to storytelling and it all came back to empathy. And I experienced it in my personal life where it was like, I didn't truly feel connected to the people around me, to my friends and to my family, until I was like really, really vulnerable with what I was feeling. And even if it was absolutely embarrassing, like not always rational and super difficult, and obviously like had its own consequences, but I fought really hard to make that something that was included within education. And so I ended up writing my thesis on the importance of art and education as a way to storytell your way into connections with other people. And in the meantime, you know, of course, I was exploring all these themes within my art, and even now afterwards, it's like it just keeps happening. It just keeps coming back. So.
Thank you. I do see some questions in the chat. Let's start with Amy's question. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to go viral for something you made, but see widely attributed? What has the overall impact of going viral meant to you as an artist?
Oh my God, I hate this question. I hate going viral. That's like not something, I think my personal aspirations and my professional aspirations are like very much at odds. I see, like just want to go and live in a mountain like house alone for the rest of my life and not speak to anyone. So the viralness of it is definitely, especially I'm 23, like so that early in my career was a shock, and one that I'm still kind of dealing with. But I think in terms of like the world and my professional life, it's a good thing. And I think to have an image like this have so much reach is important, because it's the same reason that I do all of this art, because like women need representation, people of color need representation, and to have both is super duper important. And then also just to see the victories of women celebrated, like none of what Kamala did or Ruby did was easy, and to have people recognize that, and like even MLK, it's just like celebrating these things is super super important. So yeah, I'm along for the ride for that reason.
No, I think it's incredible. You know, when I met Bria, everyone, I was super humbled by how humble you are and how incredibly talented you are. And I think everyone, when someone's giving you compliments, most people, for me personally, I get a little awkward and it gets a little weird and you're like imposter syndrome all around. But no, I totally understand. We have more questions in the chat, so thank you. Keep them coming. Someone else would like to know if either of your parents are artists and what the impact of the arts was for you as a child.
So my mom's a writer, so that's a form of art. But I think more importantly, my mom has taught me like throughout my entire life, just like love is the most important thing. And I hated it as a kid. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, you're such a like hippie. This is awful. But I recently have come to understand how much that has impacted me and my values. And then my dad is super entrepreneurial, and now I'm running my own business. So I think like that's very clear where those two
The best of both worlds.
right. But what was the second half of that question?
How art impacted you as a child, but I think you touched upon that with your
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. I was growing up. I always had art classes, and that's also why I pushed so hard to have art in education, because I think I would not have had the gall to be an artist if I hadn't have just been doing it for my entire life without any like. In the beginning, it was with support. Towards undergrad, it was just on my own, but it takes a lot to, I think, justify doing something that's like not a normal career. And I think it's really important for kids to see that. And so, yeah, it was important for me for sure.
Thank you. We have a few more questions about your younger self. Did you always know you wanted to start drawing? And what are some of the other things that you're really passionate about drawing? What inspired you to start drawing?
I don't know if I have an answer to that. I definitely always knew. I don't know. I think when I was a kid, I drew a lot of like princess dresses, which is super embarrassing now because I would never ever. But you know, it's like you grow up as a girl in America, and that's what you draw. But I think now I'm really interested in abstraction, and I think previously I was really into realism. And now I'm trying to sort of tie the two together, whether it's like cutting off people's heads or like making changes to the body, or doing like the one with the man in the ocean, like having just complete white on one side and like a sideways ocean, something like that. Was a picture that one of my friends took as well, Nick Alvarez. But yeah, I'm interested in, I'm always inspired by different things. I think I am most inspired by language, honestly. Like if I hear like turns of phrases or lyrics to songs, but it always varies.
All right. I think you might have mentioned it. How did you start to like art or start to draw? Was this inspired by your mom? Was this something you picked up in school beside drawing the princess dresses? Or was it something that you always envisioned yourself sort of being an artist as a career? Like what was that turning point?
Yeah, no, I always thought I would do art on the side as a hobby and do something more realistic for a career. The turning point was COVID because I lost all of my other jobs, and what can I do sitting at home? So it ended up being definitely not a, so I moved to San Francisco in January, and then COVID hit March. So it was like a whirlwind of events where I was like just getting jobs, and then I lost them and I was so exhausted. Um, but it was like the only thing that I knew how, like I knew I wanted to do, and I figured I had the space to do it. And I think I knew in undergrad too, I just wasn't, I was like brave enough to advocate for it in education, but not in terms of a career, because I didn't know if that was really what I wanted or if it was possible. But it definitely is possible because I fought for it every step of the way and I got it. So somehow it worked. But no, I think as a kid, I wanted to be a writer more than I wanted to be an artist. And then I don't know, I wanted to be a teacher and all these other
Hey,
things.
you could do it all.
Yeah, I have been doing it all recently. So yeah, the glory of an interdisciplinary career.
Yeah. And actually someone in our on our Q&A, they're like, how do you think you would express your artistry to reflect the year 2020 from the pandemic to social injustice?
I did actually do a piece called 2020. It was that woman who like bracing against the frame with the plant because that position of the body represented everything that I felt about 2020, in just like growing and like being constrained, but ultimately, and then the plants like ultimately growing one out. But it was hard for sure. And I also did a bunch of other, like I have my website sorted under year, and this would have been a really great way to answer that question, but I recently deleted that page. But I think it all centered around connection, more than disconnection, I think, which maybe is a little bit counterintuitive, but I think there was a real opportunity when we're staying at home and we're not going to work to connect with the people immediately around us. And so I was focusing on that a lot as well.
Thank you. For everyone who missed the presentation at the beginning, you'll be able to rewatch these. They'll be posted on our YouTube, on all our social media pages. So feel free to go back. We might pull up the PowerPoint at the very, very end if we have some time, but we have a few more questions before we move on to our community project. So before I ask you the questions, I just want to fill everyone in on our community project. Throughout this whole event, this whole week, we've posted some prompts that Bria has shared with us, asking you all to submit your artwork and your words using Padlet. So we're going to make sure we type that in. Thank you, Kevin. We type it into the chat. If you're inspired throughout this conversation with Bria, and if you've attended some of the events earlier today and you want your voice to be heard, your artwork to be seen, feel free to upload them to Padlet. You can do so anonymously if you'd like, or you can put your name on it. So we'll be sharing those in a few minutes. I know that we have a few more questions. One of my teens wants to know, who was your biggest inspiration when you began your work as an artist? And were there any people in your life who didn't support your work?
Both of those are such hard questions. I don't know that I'll admit that I'm not as big into art history as I think a lot of artists are. I don't know like many artists by name anymore. I did at some point, but I think I'm more inspired honestly by the people around me and like my friends, and the different things that they're doing, and like the different things that they say that I would never think of, and the perspectives that they give me. I think those are the most important, especially when it comes to like personal growth, which is what a lot of my work focuses on. In terms of people not supporting me, of course, I'm not gonna rat anyone out, but like every step of the way, there were people who, for practical and anxiety reasons, were just like, this is a terrible idea. Don't do this. Like pick something better. And that was partially why also I did end up doing my undergraduate thesis on art, because it was at a school that had just cut their art funding. And then I was like simultaneously kind of in my own head trying to convince myself, like I didn't go to art school on purpose. And I think I was trying to just like focus on something else. And then because there was so little support around it, I found myself even more inclined to fight for it. So I guess paradoxically it worked out, but yeah, I didn't have very many. I had like a couple mentors along the way, but most people were, I would say, more confused than not supportive. But definitely there's like a strong undercurrent of doubt when it comes to being an artist. And I think it sifts a lot of people out, which is not fair. But yeah, I like didn't come from any kind of really extenuating circumstances, and I definitely like have some level of privilege, but I fought really hard to get where I am. And I think that if people are willing to do that and they know that it's gonna be really difficult, but like ultimately worth it because you're doing something that you want to do, and that is genuine to who you are, that it can be done. It just takes a little more hours, also a little more personal decision making. Like no one is like beside me telling me what decisions to make, which is sometimes really hard because I don't always know if they're the right ones. But yeah, just go with your gut.
That's quite beautiful, though. I think finding your voice, your inner voice, and confiding and being confident in that inner voice is super crucial.
Yeah.
Often when we doubt ourselves is when we have the hardest time, right? Rather than thinking, let's swim and push through that discomfort. I think pushing through that discomfort allows us to grow a whole lot more than letting fear stop us. So what you've said is super powerful. And I think it leads into our last question that we're going to ask before we pull up the Padlet. What do you want children to take away from your artwork?
Be nice to each other. It's so hard. I don't know why it's so hard once you're, I mean, even kids are mean to each other, but it's just, this world is so hard anyway. And if we were just all nice to each other, it would be so much better. So I think, yeah, I mean, just like learning to connect, being vulnerable, even when you want to like turn inwards on yourself and just say, like, I can deal with it on my own. No one can ever deal with anything on their own. And it takes a lot of, I think, help from friends and family, and just like, if you don't have either one of those, other people, like just find someone, like find a therapist, find anyone, and like open up and tell your stories, because that's the only way that anything ever gets better.
Thank you. I think normalizing therapy, normalizing just mental illness, talking about your feelings, whoever you are, is super important. And on that, we're going to go ahead and share our community project. Again, if you feel inspired to share some words, some images, feel free to post.
I also want to thank everyone for doing this. I didn't expect to get so many responses, so this is fun.
So everyone, a few things. This is going to live in, it's going to just live online. So as long as we have it up, it'll live there as sort of a really nice way to capture our memories of this Martin Luther King Day. Usually we're in person, and it's one of our biggest community day celebrations. So this, Bria, was a great idea. I think it was super important to find a way to capture what the community felt and what they wanted to say about today, and overall what they're feeling. So here are some of the prompts. The first prompt was, draw someone's shoes you'd like to walk in. So if you haven't posted, feel free to type in the chat. Same on Facebook, write in the comments. The second prompt is, how would you respond to current events via art? You can use text, video, images. Number 3 says, if you could draw a line that represents how you're feeling, what would that look like? And last, tell a story about what conviction means to you. So Bria, let's go through the prompts before we dive into everyone's responses. Whose shoes would you like to walk in?
Oh my gosh, I didn't expect that to be turned in to me. I'm thinking too.
I'm not gonna leave you hanging.
Let me think. This is so weird, but honestly, the first thing that came to my mind was my sister. And she's gonna laugh if she sees this, but I don't know if she's watching right now. But she has such a different way of, like, we came from the same house, and she has such a different way of looking at things than me. And I think in ways that are better sometimes and less emotional. So I would love to just like see what that was like, but also I think because the relationship means a lot to me, like seeing how, like, walking in someone's shoes who I'm actively in touch with, it would be a good thing.
That's beautiful. I would actually, I'm not going to copy you, but I would agree with that answer. I think my sister and I are also very, very different. I think she, like you were saying, I think my sister is very confident and not necessarily as involved emotionally in how I might be in some decisions. So I think it'd be great to have that duality, right? And to be able to see both, see things both ways. I'm going to pick my mom though. Mostly because I really admire that she came to the United States with really no family here, and with 3 little children. She was much younger than what I am now, and I just can't imagine what that life looked like and how successful she's been in raising her 4 children. And honestly, today's theme, breaking barriers. So that really inspires me. So let's see. I feel like we have some answers in the chat and in our comments. If I can pull them up. All right. I've lost my Q&A, everyone. So if you have submitted your answers for one of the prompts, type it into the chat. All right. The next one was, how would you respond to current events via art? I think Bria, you've shared some of your work, especially that last one you talked about from last year, 2020. Mm-hmm. Let's see what some of our some of our guests have posted. I'm the most fond of the memes.
Yeah, this one at the top right is wild.
Let's find a few of those answers. This one was me. I'm super hopeful, but very anxious about it all.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, JB. She says she'd like to walk in her mom's shoes. Oh, here's another response to current events.
I agree with that. I was just talking, like, it's weird that we, even in a pandemic, we're not given a break. It was just like, oh, work from home now. Yeah.
Right. There's no, it's really hard to make that distinction.
Yeah.
You have to be disciplined. I think it took me a while. You know, you turn it off, you turn it off.
Yeah.
Here's another really good one.
Yeah, very good.
Oh, this one down here is pretty funny. Lower left.
Mm-hmm.
This one I think is that a gift from Game of Thrones? You dishonor yourself. This one says, nice job, America.
Yeah, I like the Black woman tried to tell you. That was
yes.
Good.
This one here. This is one of our alum.
Okay.
It's so great. Black women tried to tell you. It's wonderful. All right, let's scroll back up to the top. I saw some amazing shoes. Everyone from Nina Simone. Be kind, help others.
Yeah.
I did see Oprah shoes further down. Shoes from Frozen, Michael Jordan. I really like this one. It says, my plan to fill my own shoes. I was put on the earth to be me. I will be present, do my best for myself and my community every day. It is all I can do, all I can handle. And in the end, what I can control is all that is possible.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better.
And then as we keep scrolling down, we see all of these lines on how people are feeling about the current state of affairs. We have a lot of abstract lines. I think all of
it looks like a maze.
Yes, all the lines have one thing in common. They all go up and down.
Yeah, lots of sporadic white noise.
Yes. Then this one is really nice too. All these are such wonderful prompts, which all made me think about the people I admire for trying to bring love and peace to the world, like Dr. King, Gandhi, Jesus, Nelson Mandela, and the Dalai Lama. Funny thing is, I really wouldn't want to walk in their shoes because they were persecuted for their convictions. I have too much fear and too little chutzpah. Maybe that's why I admire them so much. If I could be radical like Banksy, clandestine and anonymous, I would paint graffiti hard everywhere I go. And that's what I would do to respond to current events via art. I would like to paint it on some people's foreheads.
I think I might know who did that one.
Let's see. Let me see if we got a few. The last one, convictions. We read that one. This one, as someone who loves to write because they know the impact of words. Oh, I lost it. Impact of words. This quote by Ron Suskind is part of what conviction means to me. Choose your words meticulously and then let them rumble up from some deep furnace of conviction. This is exactly what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did when composing his iconic I Have a Dream speech. Thank you, everyone. Keep them coming. The Newark Museum of Art, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. The Newark Museum of Art will be sharing these again. We'll post it on our social medias. You'll have access to view what everyone has posted. I'm trying to see if we have more questions. Oh, we do have more questions in the chat. I think we have a few more minutes. Bria, a few people want to know, one, if you've ever lived in New Orleans. We're gonna change gears a little bit.
Yeah, I grew up in Louisiana, so that's
all right. Let's see. They want to know if you've ever done art based on the homelessness crisis.
I did actually in high school. I have one piece from I think 2014 or something. I did a whole series of it was things that go unnoticed and then people who aren't seen, and so it was like focusing on like beauty within like tree bark or ice cubes, and then it like as it progressed it went more into social justice issues and went to like mothers folding laundry or people cleaning after hours, farmers planting seeds that like no one ever thinks about, and then one of them was from the perspective of that you had the cardboard sign, but you were the one who were. It was like you were holding it out, and watching people walk by. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, big thing here in San Francisco that I'm always thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot on the news how people are sort of moving out of California, and I know though the pandemic has worsened some of the situation. So I do think it's critical to kind of shed some light on what the situation is. I think because the United States is so big, we tend to forget some of the issues that are happening in our states, especially if we don't live in them. So I
Yeah, for
think it's
sure.
important. It's important, a friendly reminder of what's going on nationally. We have another question in the chat that says, "Did you ever pass by the school that Ruby Bridges attended?"
I'm not sure if I don't know. I was so young. You have to ask my mom. I definitely have researched it and seen it. And I lived like across the Pontchartrain Lake from New Orleans. And I've been to New Orleans so many times, but I don't know. But it was always in my mind, I think. Also, adding on to your previous question, I was going to say that like some of my friends also have been homeless, and like you would never know if you didn't ask them their story. And so I think that, and my colleagues too, it's just like everyone has so many stories about everything like that. And so I think, again, like being open and sharing those stories and changing the narratives around it and changing the stigma around it and like what we think about like who a homeless person is, like it's just totally a person experiencing homelessness, you know. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're muted.
Thank you. uh, I think your artwork and the fact that you focus so much on empathy and and giving yourself as a platform for others to share their story is really inspiring. And I really hope it also inspires you to share your own. And I think you do. I think in the images you show us, there's a lot of you that's there without you necessarily being there, which
Yeah,
is
I try to write a lot and share the stories, like especially on Instagram and then Facebook. I'll share like a lot of way more than I'm comfortable of myself. But it helped because people like will message me and be like, I'm going through the same thing, and so I know that it's like they're so important. Stories are so important.
yeah. I think I have a question from our CEO. She wants to know a little bit more about why did you pick Kamala Harris for that specific image? And I do know that this was in partnership
Mhm.
with Good Trouble. So maybe if you can talk a tiny bit more about that.
Yeah, so as I said, I usually am just like an amplifying voice for my clients, and so I Gordon of Good Trouble came to me with this idea, and I chose to act on it because it was absolutely it was so timely, and also I think just unfortunately the victories of women are not celebrated as much as the victories of men, and this was one of the instances where the opposite was true. And so I thought that it would be a really good just voice to add to the chorus that was the election, because it was a really big ray of hope in the midst of a lot of other things that were not hope. So yeah, it was definitely a partnership and idea, but yeah, I think that she's very important to so many people, and there's a reason that it struck such a chord, I think.
Absolutely. It's honestly, I'll tell everyone a quick story on how meeting Bria came about. We've, as a museum, like planning this event, this image kept coming up, and I'm like, let's see who did it, who designed it, who created it. So, there's no connection between us. And I was like, let's just reach out and see what she says. And we are beyond humbled and excited that we were able to share your work with so many people today. I'm really inspired by your work, and I can't wait to see all the incredible things that you produce next. Someone wants to know, which is important as an entrepreneur, how can they purchase your work?
Yeah, so I just have a website. It's briagoellermyname.com.
We will be popping that in the chat as well as on our Facebook page. And Bria, like she mentioned before, she's also a wonderful writer. So there's she has some blogs about her artwork as well. So feel free to read those and continue to share on our community page. Continue to share the projects. Bria, it was a really, really wonderful idea. I'm trying to see if we have any last minute questions. Don't mind if I look down. I'm just looking at our Facebook feed.
I also think, I don't know if anyone wants to respond to this that did participate, but I think a big part of what I was aiming for with those questions is like, how did it feel then to be part of a community conversation and to see that you had like such a zigzag line, but then so did 20 other people.
Right.
So I don't know if that's something that anyone wants to speak on or comment about, but.
Let's see. In the chat.
I can't answer that question.
Someone wants to know, they're really excited about your work. If they purchase your work, would you be able to sign it?
I know. So if you purchase my work from my website, yes. If it's the Kamala piece, I'm not doing that right now.
All right, so you heard it here. Let's see. I'm trying to see, make sure I got everyone's questions. If you have any last minute thoughts, feel free to pop them in the chat. In the meantime, I'd like to thank Bria for joining us today. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today and celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with us today. If you missed any of today's programs, feel free to check them out on our Facebook page as well as on our YouTube page. If you enjoyed this community day, and Kevin beat me to it. He popped in the chat. Please consider donating to the Newark Museum of Art so we continue all of our virtual programming. The link is in the chat. You can also sign up for our email list to make sure you don't miss out any of our upcoming events. Saturday, February 13th, we will be celebrating Carnival. So get ready to dance, get ready to listen to some amazing music. And let's see, last second questions. I think we have one more. Let's leave with that. How would you inspire a young person who is afraid? And that's the last one.
Oh, I wonder if that's coming from a young person who's afraid. Yeah, well, I'm afraid always. So there's that. I think just knowing that it's totally normal and that you have to push through anyway. And also to be nice to everyone that you meet.
I love that. If you missed any of Bria's work, please go to her website. Across the top, there's a list of her work as well as news articles and other things she's been featured in. So again, thank you so much, Bria. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. It was an honor.
Bye.